Well, this is going to be a real treat. Chris Pearlman is with me. He's CEO of Aggregate Sports. He has a voice where he would make a great career in radio, but he's gone
not,
beyond that. Don't you
not, not,
think?
not, not as good as yours, Brian, but I
I don't know
appreciate it.
about
Thank
that,
you.
but it's
Thank you.
it's going to be a true joy to have you on here. Chris Pearlman, as mentioned, CEO of Aggregate Sports. So we're going to share his story here beyond just what he does in the working world. We're going to learn about the human side, being a father as well. And this is the unique angle that I like to bring to these sports media podcasts. I'm Bryan Fenley, a broadcaster. And Chris, as you know, I've had a lot of your friends, a lot of your colleagues on, a lot of people who you are familiar with. So you
Yep.
knew that you were going to get a chance to come on. And I appreciate you being a part of this.
It's great to be here. Thank you for having me, Brian.
So, as we dive into your life and we dive into your career and all that you've done in the sports space, so much of it is traced back to you as a college athlete at Wesleyan. And
Yep.
there were some trademark moments for you back in those days. And where would you say they came from?
I think I'd say you're being kind to think that there were some trademark moments. I certainly enjoyed playing sports in college, and my passion for sports obviously led to my career in sports. But my lack of ability to be as successful on the field as I wanted to be led to what I'm doing now is being in the executive side rather than on the playing side. But for me, and I grew up playing soccer, basketball, and lacrosse, and I was fortunate enough to go to a Division III school, Wesleyan University in Connecticut, where I was able to play two sports there, soccer and lacrosse, and was more recruited for soccer than lacrosse. But at that time, lacrosse probably I was a good enough player to have played on the team. And when you're Division III, you have the luxury of being able to play two sports, which would be a little bit more difficult, probably even to do now. But back then, it was more doable. I'd say from my perspective, looking back at my time playing sports in college, it's not necessarily the moments on the field that were memorable that I think about. It's kind of what I learned being as a part of a team and some of the friendships I made, and the just working with other people and getting to know people the way that you do when you're a part of a team. Wesleyan is part of the Little Three, which a group of schools also includes Williams and Amherst. And when I went to school, Wesleyan's soccer team and lacrosse team were not as they're better now than they were back then. And there's something part of the Little Three where if you win. If you beat Williams and Amherst, you win the Little Three title. Obviously, it's a smaller title with only three schools involved, and I'd say one of the best moments I had was early on in my soccer playing career at Wesleyan, my freshman fall, where we won the Little Three title, beating Williams and Amherst. Unfortunately, that was the last time in my 4 years there that we did that. So it speaks a little bit about the success we had on the field. But at the end of the day, for me as an athlete in college, one of the important things that I got out of it beyond the friendships and teamwork, it's the structure that provides in the day-to-day basis, right? Going to practice every day, the need to figure out how to schedule yourself with those activities in the afternoon. I find, generally speaking, I'm a little more productive when I'm a little bit busier. And being an athlete in college, kind of required that I do that. I've always, even when I'm not obviously actively playing competitive sports now, just finding time every day to exercise and to be active and just to have more structure in my life is super important.
You mentioned, Chris, the success that you had as an athlete, and you're kind of putting that aside, like, okay, we got to put it in perspective here. But I would think that, like, even from those roots playing in college athletics, you get an idea of what your relationship to success is and what it stands for and what it means to you. To see where it was and what you thought of it being then to where you define it now in the working world.
Yeah, I guess to start, as many athletes are, and I'm a competitive person, so I want to do well, but I find as I've gotten a little older, I guess what I find my definition of success is just, probably more tied to less, awards or even, doing well financially. It's just happiness, right? Like being at a point where, I could spend time with my family and provide, for my family. But success isn't necessarily from a business perspective. Yes, obviously you want to do well for your business and your clients, but you want to be a good boss and leader and partner. And from my perspective, I found that I guess where I find success is when I'm happy. Usually when I'm happy, it's when I'm with my family, first and foremost. And I guess the second thing, and this ties into sports, I guess a little bit as well. And the reason that I got into the sports business more broadly, is it's something that I enjoy doing, right? Like to work in a field where you go in every day and you enjoy kind of the work that you're doing. One of the best pieces of advice I ever got was from my father when I was in college and I was thinking about what I was going to be doing next. And he's a lawyer, and I was thinking about potentially applying to law school. And he said, Chris, let me tell you, apply to law school if you want, but what you got to realize is when you graduate, if you're a lawyer, you got to do it for the rest of your life. Every day for the rest of your life, it's got to be something you want to do. And it was important advice. And literally that conversation made me, not that I wouldn't have enjoyed doing something like that. But it was a wake up call. And it was almost like, freedom then to, okay, what do I really want to do? And, that is literally the reason that I got into the sports business, was because kind of like his advice of, make sure whatever you do, it's something that you enjoy. So, and if you're doing something you enjoy, you're going to be more successful in it because you're going to enjoy going to work every day. You're going to enjoy, kind of the kind of work that you're doing. And that was super, super important to me. And advice that I live by.
So important, no doubt about it. I want to get into that in just a moment. You mentioned some of the happiest times have been with your family. What are those moments, and what do they look like?
Oh boy. I would say, and I've been very, very fortunate. I've got a wife, Laura, older son, Padre, younger son, Malachi, who are now 18 and 16. And, we've been on some adventures together. It's been 3 years, from 2016 to 2019, living in the UK with them when I was working for a Premier League team at the time, Swansea City. I guess uprooting your family from a comfortable life in New York and moving to Wales is something that was certainly not in the card. I hadn't thought about doing until the opportunity presented itself. But kind of those types of adventures are something when I look back about fun times I've had with my family. That's certainly got to be up there. It involves often travel or it's just experiencing day-to-day life with them, even if you're just doing nothing, just spending time together, sitting around the house, having a conversation. That's obviously wonderful as well. But, being overseas for 3 years was a blessing in the time that I got to, spend with them in a different type of environment, and some of the traveling that we did. That was wonderful.
Well, must have been wonderful as well is when you took your son Malachi to the pitch, and it wasn't just another day at the pitch. It was a chance to meet Sir Bobby Charlton. You mentioned having these experiences for your children and being there and wanting them to see the world and travel and experience the richness of what this world has to offer. How you knew that your son was going to get a lot out of that, but what did you get out of that, seeing how much your son got out of that experience?
Well, I mean, I guess taking a step back, it's an interesting story, Brian. Prior to moving to the UK, my son Malachi was a big Manchester United fan, and he had supported the club. And ironically enough, it was around 2015. This is when Manchester United was kind of on the beginning the downslide that happened when Sir Alex Ferguson left the team, and we were watching them in the U.S. I had no thought that I was going to be moving over there in a year at the time, and they were playing an FA Cup match, and my son said, and they were struggling in the Premier League at the time, and my son said, "I bet you Manchester United's going to do well in the FA Cup this year." He was 10 at the time, by the way. 9 or 10. He's like, "I think they're going to have a good cup run." And I said, almost facetiously, "Well, if they make the FA Cup Finals, Maliki, we'll fly over to the UK and we'll go and watch them at Wembley in the FA Cup Finals." So fast forward, so they win the next match, and they win the next match, and it's like, oh geez, they actually maybe FA Cup Finals. They may have to take them to the UK. They made the FA Cup Finals. Believe it or not, his club soccer team in the US was in a tournament that weekend, and he couldn't go, or didn't want to go to miss his team's tournament. So we didn't go to the FA Cup Finals, but ironically enough, that fall I got this opportunity to move to the UK to work at Swansea City. The whole family came along with me, and I was like, okay, even better than going to the FA Cup Finals. One time, you'll go with me. And the Swansea team, we flew up to Manchester, to Old Trafford when the Swans played at Man United, and I guess a ridiculous experience for an 11-year-old at the time, right? To go on the team played and go up to the director's box, and we walked in there, and Sir Bobby was there, and just keep in mind you're at Old Trafford. Across the stadium is the Sir Bobby Charlton stand, like in big letters on the side of on the top of the stand, and literally in our hospitality area is Sir Bobby Charlton. And like, my son's eyes are like, oh my Lord, this is crazy. And Sir Bobby literally, he comes over, he introduces himself to us, and I said, Malky is a massive Manchester United fan, or was until we moved to Swansea, at least. And Sir Bobby literally was like, "Does he want to go down to the pitch? I'd be happy to take him." So I was like, he was, literally jumping out of his shoes. He took him right down to the pitch. I stayed up in the hospitality area, and he comes back up, 10 minutes later with the biggest smile on his face, and an experience of a lifetime. So, to answer your question, for me as a parent, just obviously a special moment to see him so happy, but also just importantly to see from one of the greatest players in the history of the game be so down to earth and so nice and accommodating and welcoming, and he didn't need to do this for an 11-year-old kid. He's accomplished more. He had accomplished more in his career than almost anybody else. But just to have just a personal touch to do that, it was a super eye-opening experience. For Maliki to teach him how people should act, and for me, obviously grateful just to be in a position where he could experience something like that. Really, really fun thing to be a part of, for sure. And believe it or not, the Swans got a 1-1 draw on the day, which kept the team from being relegated that year. So not so bad either. So.
You said the word grateful, Chris. And Chris Pearlman is with me, CEO of Aggregate Sports. I'm Bryan Fenley. You said grateful for those experiences that your son, that's probably the sentiments that he would feel. I'm sure he's feeling that way and has been feeling that way about having you as a dad. And so when you think about these experiences that you've been talking about, that you've opened up the doors for him and been able to see the excitement in his eyes and then live vicariously through him, as a father, from a more big picture perspective, how do you want to set that example for your son, and how have you done that?
I guess a few things. One, and this is, I guess, pretty easy to do, I think, as a parent, is just showing your children unconditional love, right? First and foremost. That's I was very fortunate growing up where I had parents who were loving. It was a nice environment to grow up in, and they instilled in me confidence, and I'd like to think I do the same for my kids. And you lead by, I guess, you parent just by example, by being present, by being ethical and moral, and teaching them how to treat other people. I never thought it was easy to say, I suppose, but it's not hard to do, to be a good person. And at the end of the day, if you show your kids love, and you make your home a place of safety and comfort, hopefully you show them how that you act in certain situations. Hopefully they'll pick up some of those pointers as they grow up. But obviously it's not a perfect science, but you know, I'd like to think that you know, a lot of the benefits I had growing up that by having, you know, sort of a loving family that, you know, my wife and I provide for our kids, for sure.
One of the tenets that they would pick up from you is the value that you've seen in advocating for yourself and how that has played itself out in the working world and the importance of that
Yep.
in showing your kids how that has impacted your life. How would you go about beginning that conversation with them?
I guess first and foremost, I suppose if you're going to advocate for yourself, you need to have a reason to do it, right? So at the end of the day, you need to be hardworking. You need to have morals. You need, you know, what you're advocating for needs to be something you believe in, right? And I guess that's the first thing. Beyond that, you know, I like to think in my career when I was getting started, just you know, working hard, being, you know, it's a little trite, but you know, being the first one in and the last one out. Ultimately, you know, one of the best things that you can do as an employee is beyond doing what you're what you're supposed to do, is exceeding expectations, right, and going in and kind of doing more than what's expected. Um, and ultimately, nobody's going to be as big of an advocate for you as you are, right? So I guess once you tick those boxes, if you're working hard, if you're doing good work, if you're exceeding expectations, I guess, you know, I touched upon a little bit, I think, earlier when I said confidence, just having confidence in your own ability, to then be able to when required, to advocate for yourself. And I've been, you know, fortunate throughout my career at times to have had very good bosses and mentors who either allowed me the opportunity to advocate for myself, or, you know, put myself in a position where I was able to do so. But you know, I think those are ways that I think I've been able to do it, and it's made a difference, I think, at times.
The operative word that you just said there was confidence. And I'm wondering, as that has been a vehicle, an instrument for you throughout the course of your working life, how much of that was learned growing up from your father?
Um, Quite a bit. Yeah, I think quite a bit. I guess my mother too. And I wouldn't say that they themselves acted in a way that was confident. It's more that they believed in me, I suppose, right? And they um, gave me the tools to succeed, but they supported me, and listen, having people that you're around when you're growing up who believe in you and who give you support, and who love you unconditionally, is it's about paramount importance, right? I guess if the whole world had that, you know, the world would probably be a better place. But yeah, I think it's something that I'm grateful for, and as I said earlier, I'd like to think that I do the same for my kids. But yeah, my parents, both of whom were, they just both just recently retired, and they're in their late 70s, so hard workers, you know, but beyond being hard workers, were there at home, you know, when they needed to be, when they should have been, and kind of parents who would always go to my games, all my, you know, sporting events growing up, who always took a you know, a keen interest in what I was doing. But also, it gave me, I guess, also, this is important that I'm learning this as my 16 and 18-year-old are growing up. Gave me some freedom to go out and to make some mistakes, of course, but just to go out and do it on my own. And you know, you're not able to do that successfully unless you have confidence, and I'm fortunate that was able to happen in my youth and development.
To this day, Chris, how often randomly will moments or stories or memories from your childhood just pop up in your brain about something you did, an interaction with your parent, where it actually is applicable to your life now, where you could glean on
All
that
the
sort of
time.
experience?
Well, all the time, all the time. I mean, yeah, obviously, as my kids get older, and the memory of me at 16 or 18 is a lot stronger than it is when I was 8 or 10. So I'm seeing this more and more, and my older son's applying to colleges now, and I remember going through that process myself when I ended up going to Wesleyan. So um, it happens quite a bit, and it makes you realize that life moves pretty fast, and the more things, sometimes the more things change, the more they stay the same, right? Um, but it's a super fun thing, obviously, to experience and to be a part of. And I don't say I'm living vicariously through my kids, but I do really enjoy watching them go through some of the fun things that I teenagers should be going through as they grow up.
Life moves fast, but when have you found successfully that you've been able to slow down life or make it seem like it isn't going by as quickly?
It's tough. It's tough, to be honest with you. At times, I listen. I don't go out tons outside of what I have to do for work. I'd like to get home after work and spend time with my family. But um, you know, one of the things that we like to do as a family, we don't do it as much anymore as my kids have gotten a little older. But we did this a lot when I lived in Wales. Is go on long walks with the four of us, and um, in those kind of times when people aren't looking at their phones and they're not distracted by what's on the TV and whatever else, and just the four of us are out on like a 6 or 8 mile walk, and we're just having a nice conversation. Things like that are moments like that are super super special, and yeah, I try to do it as often as we can. Sometimes it's a little more difficult with how busy life can be, but that's something that we try to do.
Well, I was going to ask you, yeah, how hard is it with what you're doing now to obviously there is, and you said this earlier in the conversation, like finding that moment in the day to have a little bit of self-care, because I think a better version of you makes a better worker, and it's a wonderful symbiotic relationship that I feel like you've done a really good job at achieving. But with everything that you're doing right now, how challenging, yeah, can it be to unplug? And when do you allow yourself that time when your schedule is bombarded and it's so busy?
Um, well, I get up early
Okay.
and I spend I do that, and I'll enjoy my cup of coffee and do the crossword at 6 a.m. and then I'll pretty religious about exercising. So I'd say from 5:30, 6 o'clock till I leave for work at 7:38. That's kind of the me time where I'm exercising and it's decompressing a little bit before the day starts. I take the train into work to Grand Central, so there's some time on the train to do that. Um, I have a business partner, Rem DeRowan, who I started this business with, who is a extremely hard worker, and I have sometimes difficulty keeping up with him and all the work that he does. But when you've got a business partner that is engaged and very very focused, at times it draws that out of me as well. But I also have the comfort of knowing that the times when I'm not necessarily focused in on what might be going on at a certain time, I know that he is, and I guess probably vice versa at times with me. But that's helpful, obviously, to have people that you work with, and it's not just him, by the way. Other people at Aggregate Sports are do a phenomenal job, and it's great to have people that you work with who are super capable. It makes life easier and it gives you a chance to focus on other things at times.
When you're on the train commuting into work, what are you doing?
Um, it depends on the day. In the morning, I'm maybe finishing a crossword or doing New York Times spelling bee, or listening to or listen to a podcast. or answering emails, getting ready for the day. On the way home, it's often just a few final things that I'm finishing up. I guess when you have your own business, you're never really completely shutting off, right? You're really just never completely disappearing. So um, I'm always, for better and for worse, I suppose, engaged in what's going on and checking email and just making sure things are going well. But beyond just the business, we have a number of clients that we work with that we, need to make sure things are going well for them. So always reachable, I guess, with them. But yeah, those 30 minutes on the train to and from work are helpful in kind of the somewhat of a separation that exists between what happens at the office and ultimately what happens at home.
How good are you now? Because I've heard the word crossword puzzle a few times in this conversation. You must be really good at them. How good are you now
uh,
at them?
no, I'm not. I'm not. I mean, listen, I can New York Times crossword. I can do Monday through Thursday, pretty much every time ish. Friday, Saturday is up in the air, and Sunday with enough time, I could generally do. I'm one of the things I am with them, Brian, is I'm patient, right? Like I may not do them quickly, but I can start in the morning, and if I'm finishing it at 10:30 at night, just kind of going back and forth to it. But I'm I'm good enough because I've learned some tricks through the years, but by no means am I like some other people that are out there that can do a puzzle in 2 or 3 minutes. That's not me at all.
What are those tricks that you've learned over the years that would help you?
Oh boy, like small little, what different words. There are certain crossword words
Interesting.
like ABBA is obviously a band from I guess the '80s. That's a frequent answer that you see. Little things like that you expect to see when you do it a lot. But I'm I'm not an expert, that's for sure. There's a lot of people better than I am.
But you have like if you're really good at those and you are and you're selling yourself short, you have to have a lot of I wouldn't call it it's not useless information, but it's a lot of outside information beyond what you're needing to use for work. So how good are you at just storing all of this trivia information that might be unrelated to your job and your family? You must be pretty good as far as the depths of your memory to be able to do all of these things and come about with these answers.
I what I would say is it keeps me sharp. My I would say my knowledge in that regard is that deep. It's honestly, and this is I guess a skill in life to an extent. It's patience and perseverance, right? Knowing that when you look at it the first time, you may not get it. You go back and you look at it again, or you do something else and you'll come back to it later in the day. Sometimes taking this is actually frankly this is an important I guess thing that I've learned throughout my career. Just sometimes you take a step away and you come back later and take a look at something, you get a different perspective. That happens all the time in crosswords, and that's I guess something that I've learned in terms of just information and knowledge about random facts, and that could be helpful for crosswords. Not as much as you'd expect at all. A little bit, but not as much as you'd expect.
Patience and perseverance. I love how you brought that up, Chris, because I would have to say, and I think you were articulating on this, those two words have gotten to be such a central theme to your life, to your working success. And to be able to, as you said, come back to something, maybe not initially, you not might not have the right answer, but the fact is you come around to it again and then you do. How have you seen that dynamic play itself now in what you're doing with Aggregate?
Yeah, I mean, listen. At the end of the day, Aggregate Sports represents sports properties, and we help sports properties monetize their commercial assets. So we're selling sponsorship and media on behalf of Olympic federations and other properties. Um, and it is not necessarily from a marketing perspective the brands with whom we transact and the companies that sponsor the properties that we represent that we sell to. Um, our properties may not be the first thing that they think about sponsoring. So it takes a fair bit of outreach, and you get a lot of a lot of no's and a decent amount of unreturned calls and emails. And you need to stay on top of it because, one of the things that we believe in strongly here is that our properties do have significant value for brands. And it gets back a little bit to what I was talking about earlier about, doing something you believe in and that you enjoy, for work. I sincerely, we wouldn't sign properties here if we didn't think they were of value to brands. So we believe in them for sure for certain clients. But it's not always easy to get in front of the right people and to make that connection. So it takes, a decent amount of stick-to-itiveness, and perseverance, also without question, some creative thinking and some, good ideas, and positioning things in a certain way and using data and analytics and all these, fun things we have access to. But it takes a lot of work. And, if the first email or phone call goes unreturned, it doesn't mean that, we sit back and just accept that. We go out and we figure out other ways to represent our properties in the best possible light, for the marketplace. And that's, we've been fortunate, and that's one of the reasons that we've had some success is we've got a mindset here of let's roll up our sleeves and let's make sure that we're out there advocating for our clients in the best possible way. And we've had some success doing that, fortunately.
In having that success, how has that upped the exposure of your brand and the word getting out about what you all at Aggregate Sports are able to do for people?
Yeah. It's helpful, right? Yeah. Obviously the best beyond ourselves, we talked about being our own advocates, being an advocate for ourselves. We've got fortunately some clients that we've done well for who at times, will refer us, and that's very, very helpful. And the business now is about 3 years old, and we are 3.5 years old, and we continue to grow. And at the beginning, nobody knew what aggregate sports was, and now we've developed a nice little niche here and nice corner of the world that we operate in, pretty successfully. And we like to think that there's some momentum behind it, but we need to stay active in preaching the gospel and making sure people know about the work that we're doing. Obviously, having conversations like this is helpful in getting the word out. But ultimately, we're nothing if we don't do our job well for the properties that we represent, and that's our focus for sure, day in and day out.
You said active. I like to think of it as proactive. For you in the expansion and the growth of your company in the last 3+ years, I would think that would be such an important part of growing. What does proactivity look like? You hinted at it, but from a grassroots perspective, what does that look like from the day to day?
So I guess there's a few things. I mean, ultimately, there's two parts to this, right? There's the part of what we need to do on a day-to-day basis for the properties we represent, right? Going out and monetizing them in the marketplace, getting new sponsors, selling advertising, getting content distributed for them, and that's a part of our business. And that's the main focus, so being honest. The second part of that is kind of the PR/marketing side and how we go about telling our story to other properties that we might represent and or to other brands to whom we might be selling. And that comes from looking for ways. I guess I'll give you an example of it that we did recently. Is we're pretty deep in the women's sports space, which is a growing space right now, right? A lot of money is being invested, as it should be, in women's sports. We represent two of the most watched women's sports organizations out there, U.S. Figure Skating and USA Gymnastics. They actually have the highest 2% of female viewers in all of sports on television, right? We don't believe that enough brands know that, right? I think a lot of brands think of women's sports. They might think of women's basketball, or they might think of women's soccer, and all good platforms for sure for brands. figure skating and gymnastics, perhaps because they're Olympic sports, perhaps because they're individual sports, may not be top of mind necessarily for brands. So we commissioned a research study just this past year, where we asked people for their perception of those sports, and it turns out actually that consumers thought that figure skating and gymnastics, of all sports that women participate in, were of greatest interest to women, right? And we think that connection necessarily hasn't been seen by certain brands that are out there. So little things like that, right? Doing this research study, and putting out the results of the research study, and we had one of my colleagues wrote an op-ed about it in the Sports Business Journal. And we're actively out there promoting it through our LinkedIn. So things like that are important for our properties, right? The clients that we represent. But it's also important for the growth of our business to discuss that these are good outlets for certain brands. And if companies do really want to put their money where their mouth is, and actually do want to support women's sports, they should support women's sports that women participate in and that women watch. And these are two of them that they do more so than others. So that's just, I guess, one example of how we go about preaching that and bringing it to life.
Your clients, they'll see like you said, the research and the data driven education that you provide them to allow them to open up their perspective on what could be, say, a project, an entity that would make sense financially. And to get them to do that, Chris, I would think that trust has to be at the core. In developing that trust with your clients, developing that trust with your family, with your colleagues, how do you get to that?
I guess, first and foremost, I would say, being, you are what you do, right? And gets back to, I guess, what we talked about a little earlier, leading by example, and by showing them. One of the things that we take pride in is the fact that we've got a very, very high rate of renewal from sponsors. And not only that, actually, one of the I guess concepts and themes of aggregate sports is aggregating rights across certain verticals, and we've done it in the Olympic space. You get one brand who sponsors one Olympic federation. We, I think, do a good job in connecting that brand to the federation. They see value in that. We sell them a sponsorship. They activate against it. It works well. They like working with us. And then from there, we'll go and sponsor another property that we represent that's in the same space. And in that regard, the proof is in the pudding, right? Like, you're doing well for your clients. They like the service we're providing. We are very, very diligent about, follow up. When a brand sponsors something, making sure they're getting photos of it, making sure the recap is strong, and making sure that we're providing them with evidence that this is something that worked for them. And then by doing that, then they take that and it allows us to grow that business to other properties that we represent. So ultimately, it's just doing good work for them, and being there for them and hearing what they have to say. Learning, obviously, it's super important to learn what their objectives are, and make sure that whatever we do with them works for what their marketing goals are, what they're looking to accomplish. And if we do that well, that business will grow, and our business will grow, and we're fortunate that that's what's happened.
It has happened, and it's happened time and time again. It's a case study on how to grow brands and to work with clients and then expand their footprints in the industry. And as we wrap up this conversation, Chris, I know that you were talking about, say, crossword puzzles, but I'm thinking of, and I don't think you have enough time in your busy schedule. I'd love to see you on Jeopardy. I'd love to see how far you could go on Jeopardy. I think you could do pretty well for yourself on that show.
Well, you're kind of saying that, Bryan. I don't know if that's the case. And I guess for better or worse, we're probably not going to find out. My older son probably would do quite well, but nice of you to say. Thank you.
It might not be a game show that we're going to see Chris Pearlman in, but we are going to see him showing out with this company at Aggregate Sports as the CEO and doing incredible work across so many different mediums. For Chris Pearlman, I'm Bryan Fenley. Chris, thanks so much for giving
Thanks,
us a
Brian.
really a detailed look inside your life and inside the everyday doings of what it takes to be you, even outside the work structure and into your family life and to your upbringing.
Thank you very much, Brian. I appreciate it. A lot of fun.